The square of the standard deviation is known as the variance, and the variance is standard deviation the whole square. 155 minus 163 is minus 8, 158 minus 163 is minus 5, 0, 6 and 15. Now I get the sigma as 8. How do we calculate the mean here? So whenever class intervals are given, we have to calculate the midpoint. So the mid values. Hello everyone, I am Purnima, faculty in the Department of Commerce and Management, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. I welcome you all to this session. In this session, having a discussion on standard deviation. So standard deviation is the measure of the amount of variation in dispersion of a set of values. So in the standard deviation, we just have the measure of the amount of variation. So what is the amount of variation from the mean to the value? So that is what we will be learning here. A large standard deviation means less degree of uniformity in a set of observations. So when you are observing certain data, so if there is a very huge standard deviation, then it means that there is less degree of uniformity with the observations. If two sets of values have same average, then the series with the smallest standard deviation is more consistent and uniform in nature. So if you have to have a comparison of two series of values, then the series with the smallest deviation will be more consistent and uniform. The absolute measure of a standard deviation, whereas the relative measure is known as the coefficient of standard deviation. So coefficient of variation is also a relative measure of dispersion which helps in comparative studies. Coefficient of variation is the percentage variation in mean, standard deviation being considered as the total variation in the mean. So we can see that the absolute measure is the standard deviation, whereas the relative measure is the coefficient of standard deviation. So in measures of dispersion, we have two methods, that is the absolute measure and the relative measure. Now the absolute measure is the standard deviation, whereas the relative measure is the coefficient of standard deviation. So the coefficient of variation is a relative measure of dispersion which helps in comparative studies. So when you are comparing two variables, for example, the price of the product and the sales of the product. So when the price falls, the sales rises, or so it goes the opposite way. So when the price rises, the sales fall. So when you are having a comparison between two variables, this coefficient of variation is most useful. So standard deviation being considered as the total variation in the mean. So the formula for standard deviation is calculated by determining the square root of the deviation from the mean. So all the deviations from the mean is calculated and the square of the deviation divided by the number of values, we get the standard deviation. Then for the coefficient of standard deviation, we have standard deviation divided by mean, and the coefficient of variation means, so the coefficient of standard deviation into 100. So percentage of that becomes the variation. Now we have this concept of variance. The square of the standard deviation is known as the variance, and the variance is standard deviation the whole square. So whatever standard deviation we get, so that the whole square is called as the variance. So we have this important formulas to remember. One is the sigma d square divided by n. Then we have the standard deviation formula, then coefficient of variation formula, and the formula for variance. So four formulas we have to remember. We have the problem here. The x values are given. So I write the x values in the vertical column in the vertical form. So the x values, I am writing it here. So 10, 12, 20, 28, 12, 8. Now I have to find the mean. How do I find the mean? Sigma x divided by n. So I find the value of sigma x. So the total will be 90. Now the formula for mean equals sigma x divided by n. So that will be equal to 90 divided by 6. So that is equal to 15. So mean equals 15. Now I have to take the deviations from the mean. So it will be x minus 15. So 10 minus 15 is minus 5. 12 minus 15 is minus 3. 20 minus 15 is 5. 28 minus 15 is 13. 12 minus 15 is minus 3. 8 minus 15 is minus 7. So we have the d values here. Then next we have the d square. So d square will be the square of these values. So 5 5s are 25, 3 3s are 9, 5 5s are 25, 13 13s are 169, 3 3s are 9, 7 7s are 49. So when you add all this, so we get the answer as 286. So sigma d square. Sigma d square equals 286. Now I have the formula for standard deviation. So it will be root of sigma d square divided by n. So that will be root of 286 divided by 6. So this will come up to 6.9. So this will be equal to 6.9. So I got the standard deviation as 6.9. Now we have to calculate the coefficient of variation CV will be equal to standard deviation by mean. So that will be equal to 6.9 divided by 15. Then we have the CV equals standard deviation by mean. So this will be equal to 0.46. This is the coefficient of standard deviation. So 0.46. Then coefficient of variation will be equal to standard deviation by mean into 100, that is 0.46 into 100. So that comes up to 46%. So this is how we calculate the standard deviation when only values are given. The next problem, the following are the heights of 5 candidates who have attended an interview. Compute the standard deviation. So we have to find the standard deviation here. They have given us the heights. So it will be 155, 158, 163, 169, 178. So they have given us the heights. Now this is x values are given. Now I have to add all this to get the mean. So it will be 8 plus 5 13 plus 3 16, 16 plus 9 will be 25, 30 33. 3 borrow, 8 plus 5 13, 19, 19 plus 6 25, 25 plus 7 is 32, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 823. So 823 is the total. Now I have to find the mean. The mean will be sigma x divided by n, that is 823 divided by 5. So that will come up to 5 ones are 5, 5 6 are 30, then 5 4s are 20.5, 164.5. So the mean equals 164.5. Then next we have the standard deviation here. Now the standard deviation can be calculated in two ways. That is, with the help of the assumed mean also we can calculate the standard deviation. So the formula for standard deviation will be mean equals now we have the heights here. Now next I will calculate D. D will be equal to x minus 163. So I assume 163 as the assumed mean. So now I can write it as D equals x minus 163. So 155 minus 163. So now we can see the calculations here. So the D equals x minus 163. So x values minus 163. So 163 is assumed mean. So x 155 minus 163 is minus 8. 158 minus 163 is minus 5. 0, 6 and 15. Now I get the sigma as 8. Now sigma D square. So 8 into 8 is 64. 5 5s are 25. 6 6 are 36, 15 into 15 is 225. So sigma D square. Now I substitute the values here. Standard deviation equals 350 by 5 minus 8 by 5 the whole square. So 350 by 5 is 70. 8 by 5 is 1.6 the whole square. So when I simplify this, I get the answer as 8.21. So that is the standard deviation of this. Next, we have the calculation of standard deviation, the discrete series. So the discrete series means when the frequencies are given. So compute the standard deviation and its coefficient for the salaries of 100 employees. So they have given us the salaries of 100 employees. So we have to calculate the standard deviation. So the standard deviation formula is given here. Standard deviation equals root of sigma fd square divided by sigma f. So we'll note down the problem here. 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. So the salaries are given. So salaries are 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. Then they have given us the frequencies here 4, 14, 22, 30. 4, 14, 22, 30, 20, 8 and 2. So this is the frequencies. So salaries are given and the frequencies are given. Now we have to calculate the standard deviation. Now what is the formula for standard deviation? Standard deviation equals root of sigma fd square divided by n or sigma f. So we have the frequencies here. Now the next step will be we have to calculate the mean. See, whenever we are given a problem on standard deviation, the first thing will be we have to calculate the mean here. So in order to calculate the mean, I have the formula here, sigma fx divided by n. So fx means f into x. So this is the x values, this is the f value. So f into x. So 20 into 4 is 80. 14 3s are 420. 40 into 2, 880. 15 into 5 3s are 15. Then 6 12, 6 2s are 12. 7 8s are 8 2s are. So f into x, sigma fx. Now this will be equal to sigma fx will be equal to, add all these values here. So this will be When we add all these values, I get the answer as sigma fx equals 4800. So when I add all these values, I get the value as 4800. Now the mean equals 4800 divided by, when I add all the f values, I get as 100. So sigma f equals 100. Yes. Now sigma f. So this is equal to sigma fx divided by sigma f. So sigma f is 100. So the mean equals 48. So 48 is the mean. Now I just take the d here. The d will be x minus 48. X minus 48. So 20 minus 48 is minus 28, minus 18, minus 8, 2, 12, 22, 32. Then next we have the d square values. So the d square values will be, the d square values will be 28 into 28, 18 into 18, 8 8s are 64, 2 2s are 4, 12 2s are 12 into 12, 144, 22 into 22, 32 into 32. So this will come up to 784, then 324, then we have 484, then 1024. So when we add, the next step will be f into d square, the frequency into d square. So 4 into 784, 4 4s are 16, 6 borrow 1, 4 8s are 32, 32, 33, 3 borrow, 4 7s are 28, 29, 30, 31, 3136. Next 14 into 324, 22 into 64, 30 into 4 is 120, 20 into 144, so that will be 2880, then 8 into 484, 2 into 1024, that will be 2048. So when I multiply 14 into 324, I get 4536. Then next will be 1408, then 3872. So when I add all this, I get sigma fd square equals 18,000. So I have the sigma fd square, I have n. So standard deviation will be root of 18,000 divided by 100. So that will be equal to 13.42. So the root of 180 is 13.42. Now coefficient of standard deviation will be equal to standard deviation by mean, that is 13.42 divided by 48. Then coefficient of variation will be standard deviation by mean into 100, that is 13.42 by 48 into 100. So this comes up to 27.96. This is 0.2796. So when I find the CV, it comes up to 27.96%. Now we have one more problem here. The following are the data about the stock price and the number of trades in a week. Find out the standard deviation and its coefficient. They have given us the problem here. So 40 to 50, 50 to 60, 60 to 70, 70 to 80, 80 to 90, 90 to 100. So we'll write it down here. The class intervals. So 40 to 50, 50 to 60, 60 to 70, 70 to 80, 80 to 90, 90 to 100. So we are given the class intervals. Then we also have the number of traders 50, 80, 125. 50, 80, 125. Then 220, 175, 100. 220, 175, 100. So the total comes up to 750. So this is the frequency. Yes. So we have the class interval. So we have the frequency. Now, how do we calculate the mean here? So whenever class intervals are given, we have to calculate the midpoint. So the mid values. So mid values will be 45, 55, 65, 75, 85 and 95. Now, the next step will be, we have to find out what is the mean of this values given. So, it will be sigma Fm divided by n. So, mean value will be equal to sigma Fm divided by n. So, this will be Fm. So, 45 into 50. So, 45 into 50 will be 74.2. So, we have the FM column here, that is frequency into mid value. 50 into 45 is 2250, 80 into 55 is 4400, 125 into 65, 220 into 75, 175 into 85, 100 into 95. So, we got 55,650. Now, I calculated the mean, I get mean value as 74.2. Now, I have to find the D column. So, D column means mid value minus the mean. So, mid value minus 74.2. So, 45 minus 74.2, 55 minus 74.2, 65 minus 74.2. So, this will come up to minus 29.2 minus 19.2. Then this will be equal to so, we have the x minus the mean. So, 45 minus 74.2 is 29.2. 55 minus 74.2 is 19.2. So, in this way, I get the D column. Now, the D square. So, D square will be 29.2 the whole square. So, 0.8 the whole square. It will be 0.64. So, in the same way, you multiply all these columns. So, we get the answer as So when we multiply f into d square, that is frequency into d square column, so 50 into 852.64, I get 42,632. So the same way, the 80 into 368.64, I get 29,491.2. So when I add all these values, I get 1,46,520. Now we have the standard deviation formula equals root of sigma fd square divided by n. So standard deviation will be 1,46,520 divided by 750. Standard deviation will be equal to root of 195.36. So that will be equal to 13. Standard deviation is 13.98. Now, if you have to find the CV, so this will be equal to standard deviation by mean into 100. So that is equal to 13.98 divided by 74.2 into 100. So that comes up to 18.84%. So this is the answer. So 18.84% is the standard deviation of this problem. So with this, we come to the end of this session. Hope you have all followed it. Thank you.